Hey guys, it's coming as me another classic movie review for you guys. Now, this movie we're reviewing, I've wanted to see, obviously, for so long, and I feel so bad that I don't have the Blu-ray of this movie. I was gonna buy the Blu-ray. Something weird's going on, like my credit card or my Amazon or something, so I was basically forced to watch this movie online. I had no other choice, and it really sucked because I wanted to watch it on Blu-ray, but at least I finally got to watch it. It's a movie that is considered the greatest film of all time by many film lovers and by the American Film Institute, and that is the 1941 drama classic Citizen Kane. Yes, I have finally seen Citizen Kane. You have no idea how long I've wanted to see it. Just out of curiosity, I mean, you hear that and you think there's no way this can be the greatest film of all time. There just isn't. It doesn't seem like that kind of movie. And plus, there are so many other films. What makes this film so special? And I've heard people say that it's boring and that it's overrated, and I really just wanted to check it out for myself, and I told myself this is going to be one of the last ones I watch, because obviously, I'm not going to watch what's considered the greatest film of all time in the middle of classic movies. I'm just not going to do that. I'm going to do that, close to the end, and this isn't the last one because it's not 3 hours, and the last 3 movies I'm watching are all, the last 4 movies I'm watching are all 3 hours, so, or over 3 hours, but after watching Citizen Kane, do I think this is the greatest film of all time? I don't know. I'd have to watch it probably a few more times to figure that out, because I mean, I've heard people say that best movie's kind of subjective, and that really is to anyone's opinion. I will say it is definitely up there, though. Citizen Kane is by far one of the best films ever made. I don't know if it's the greatest, but it's one of the best films ever made. It is an absolute masterpiece. It is such a fantastic movie, and there's so much to love about it. Now, the thing that I find most interesting about this movie is the plot, because a lot of people find the plot really stupid, and they just think because the movie, is considered the greatest movie of all time, that the plot is just ridiculous, and I think the plot is genius. Basically, we focus on this guy, Charles Foster Kane. He has just died, and his last words were Rosebud. That was basically the last word that he said, and pretty much they start, this reporter, basically Jerry Thompson, wants to discover what the meaning of Rosebud is, so he starts interviewing everyone that was basically important in Charles Foster Kane's life, and we see more of Charles Foster Kane's story, and we eventually do find out what the meaning of Rosebud is, and that basically is the plot of the movie. It's an awesome plot, and I think that honestly is a really great plot. Now, you would just think, how the hell can they tell that story, and just how the hell can they use that plot for a whole movie? Well, that's because, guys, there's a lot more to this movie than just that. First of all, let's get to the acting in this movie, which the acting is just phenomenal from everyone. Everyone gives an amazing performance in this movie, and that's something I love. Orson Welles as Charles Foster Kane, one of the greatest acting performances, I think, of all time, seriously. I thought Charles Foster Kane was a real person because of how well Orson Welles portrayed him, and they make it seem like he is a real person. That's something I thought was definitely very well done. His portrayal of Charles Foster Kane is just fantastic. The character of Charles Foster Kane is great. He's not a bad man by any means, but he's very bitter throughout his whole life. He's very upset throughout his whole life, and he kind of just became too powerful, and because of that, he made some bad decisions, and that caused his downfall, and you really connect with his character very well. I thought it was definitely really great, and something I thought was really interesting about his performance was the way he showed emotion. He doesn't show emotion just by talking. I mean, a lot of the movie, what I love is his facial expressions. They're very important throughout the movie, because there's one pivotal scene throughout, like, the end of this movie. He gives, like, this there's, like, no dialogue. He's destroying things in an apartment. I don't want to spoil why he's doing it, but it's a classic scene. He's just destroying this whole apartment, and it's an incredible scene to watch him in. And something else I love is that when he's happy, you're happy. When he's sad, you're sad. And that's something that I definitely liked very well. I mean, there are some very fun scenes with this character, but also some really tragic stuff. I mean, seriously, Charles Foster Kane went through some really tragic stuff in this movie, and Orson Welles really pulled it off. He gave an amazing performance, and he really was amazing in this movie. Joseph Cotton as Jedi Leland. This was one of Joseph Cotton's first performances, and he, again, also really kills in this movie. He doesn't have as much as you'd think, but he definitely does a great job. The bonding between him and Charles Foster Kane are great. I loved his character. I thought he was really great. Dorothy Cummingore, oh my god, she was amazing. As Susan Alexander Kane, who basically is his second wife, because his first wife doesn't really work out. But she was incredible in the movie. I loved her little subplot in the movie. You know, she wants to become this opera star, but she's just not as talented, and she doesn't really have the ambition and things like that. And Charles, you know, is doing something that she wants to do, but she just doesn't really have the ambition to do it, and she didn't really realize that. And that's something I thought was definitely very interesting, is that this wasn't something bad that Charles did. He tried to get her this opera career, something she loved. It's just she didn't realize that, you know, it's very, you know, it's much tougher than she thought, it's harder than she thought, and seeing that plot going on, I thought was definitely very interesting. There are some really sad scenes between them, but they have some fantastic chemistry as well. I mean, the first time they meet, it's a great scene. The two of them, I thought, were fantastic, and Dorothy Cummingore really gave an amazing performance. Everett Sloan as Mr. Bernstein, I thought he was also very good. Ray Collins, oh my god, Ray Collins is so great in this movie. He basically plays the antagonist, if you will, Jim W. Geddes. Even though he doesn't play a huge role, he is pretty much the antagonist of the movie. Although I would kind of say the antagonist of this movie is just life. That's kind of the antagonist. But there is this amazing scene between him and Charles Foster Kane where they're screaming at each other, they're pissed off, and it's a great fight scene. It's really well done, and I thought it's just an incredible scene, really. It's a great scene, definitely one of my favorite scenes in the movie by far. George Corliss as Thatcher, I thought was really good, and everyone was great in this movie. I could talk about everyone, but everyone I think was absolutely fantastic. They all did a great job, and I guess the only other person I talk about in terms of acting was William Alland as Jerry Thompson, who is pretty much the person we're following around throughout this whole movie, trying to figure out what's going on with this case. I mean, he's kind of like the audience. We're trying to find out as much about Charles Foster Kane as he is. He's trying to find out what this means, why he said this final word, and you almost feel like you're doing the report on him, which I think is definitely very interesting, the way they do that. You know, they kind of make it seem like you, like, as Jerry does the report, you're kind of just reading over his report and kind of seeing it play out, and I thought that was definitely very well done, and I really loved that, I have to say. I thought that was phenomenal. Now, the directing by Orson Welles is obviously fantastic. He directed it, and he also did a great job. He really pulled it off, I have to say. I mean, he did everything in this movie. He directed it, he did the acting, he did the screenplay. I don't know if this movie was really low budget. There's no way it was. But most times that happens, that's never a good thing. This was one of the few times where the directing, the screenplay, the acting, it really pulled off. And he gave it the tone he gives to this movie is fantastic. The messages he gives this movie, I mean, the directing is just fantastic. I love the directing to this movie. Now, I'm going to go on a limb here, guys, and say that this movie might have the best screenplay of all time. It might. I don't know if it does, but I think it's very close to one of the greatest screenplays of all time. I mean, there are so many classic lines. Just starting off with Rosebud, I mean, that's like the most famous single word in Hollywood history. It's one word, and it's one of the most notable quotes ever. I mean, to this day, you will still see people just go, Rosebud. You will still see people do that, and I know that was kind of creepy, but, like, that's how it is in the movie, and the screenplay is fantastic, the dialogue is so great, but what I love about Charles Foster Kane's character is that they make him seem like a real person. I mean, they go complete with a 10-minute newsreel on the guy that actually opens the movie. It's very well done. I thought he was a real person, but it really, I think, one of the things I love about the movie is that it's supposed to make you feel like he is a real person so you can get into that world, and he's kind of supposed to represent, you know, someone that made some bad choices, and I really like the messages that this movie has. For example, the movie deals with power and how power can be a good thing and a bad thing, and for Charles Foster Kane, that was definitely a huge thing, you know. His life starts out really good, but then he makes some really bad choices that eventually really affect him, and you really do see that. The movie also has a lot to say about family and how important family is, and I think that's really great as well. There's so many great messages about this movie, and there's so much I love about it. And one of the reasons I think this is considered the single greatest motion picture of all time is because it's not just about this man's life. It's not just because about, you know, the word Rosebud. It's about this man's life. It's about a man that made bad choices. It's about a man who could have done a lot more. I mean, what this is a man that in the movie people say could have been president and things like that. And it really sucks that, you see in the movie that his life went on the path that it did. It really is terrible that that had to happen, but that's life. Bad things happen, and this movie really shows that perfectly. I really love that about this movie is, that not everything goes the way we want it to. Things don't always work out in the end, and we just have to accept that and move on. It might seem hard, but we have to, and I think that's a really great message. I love that in the movie, and I think the screenplay is just great. I love the way the movie's constructed too, because they go back and forth between this reporter. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Titanic in the way that it's styled, which I know is a really bad comparison, but it's very much like that kind of movie where you see the reporter, he gets all the facts, and what I like is that whenever a character pops up in the movie, and the flashbacks is when a character pops up in someone that he's interviewing, which I think is definitely very well done, and I really like the style of that. You really got to see the characters, you're really connected with them more, and just seeing them after Charles Foster Kane's death, you saw the impact that he had in their life, what he did to their life, if it was good or bad, how they feel about him, and that's something I thought was definitely very well done. I love that, and it really made you feel like this was a real person. Obviously, he wasn't a real person, but it made you feel that way. This movie, by far, also has one of the greatest speeches of all time. I mean, his speech when he's running for governor, I believe, is just incredible to watch. It's such an empowering speech, and he just did a great job, I have to say. It really was an incredible scene, and I love that. And the movie also does a great job of showing how you can start off with nothing to everything to nothing again, and that very much is what ends up happening to Charles Foster Kane, and I think that is just fantastic. And I think there have been many movies that have tried to do what Citizen Kane does, but just have failed miserably. And I just think that's because Citizen Kane is a movie that you really can't you really can't try to do, your own take on. You need to, this is a movie that never was ever remade, thank God, and I hope it never gets remade. The day this movie's remade, cinema is doomed. I'm sorry, the day this movie is remade, cinema is doomed, okay? Because this is one of those movies, just like Casablanca, you can never remake, you can never do another story of this movie. There's no other version that you can watch except for this version. And the other thing I can't stand about this movie is that there are many film classes that just force you to watch this movie and analyze it, and I feel this is a movie that you need to watch on your own time. You're gonna enjoy it more if you watch I mean, me personally, I don't give a shit what movies they show in school. It's just, I care if the movie's good or not, but I know people are like, oh, black and white, not good. Well, there's a reason why the movie's black and white. First of all, this movie has some of the greatest cinematography of all time. Most people will say that, and I completely agree with that. The cinematography in this movie is genius. Something I didn't notice is the way this movie is constructed. It's not constructed like other movies. I saw something on Wikipedia about this, which I think is definitely very interesting. They use this device called deep focus. It basically, in nearly every scene in the film, and I'm reading what Wikipedia says here, in every scene in the film, the foreground, background, and everything in between are all in sharp focus, and that's because the cinematographer did this through his experimentation with lenses and lighting. Basically, they were trying to explore new technology, and they handled it perfectly. I mean, the way the movie starts, it's just a bunch of, like, panning shots. It's just like a bunch of tracking shots, just setting the setting for the movie. The cinematography really does go with the dark tone of this movie. It sets for a very grim tone. You know the movie's gonna get dark. You know you're in for a very dark movie, because they had color. They could have used color, but this is a movie that never should be colorized. This is a movie that needs to be seen in black and white. And I'm going to quote Roger Ebert, because Roger Ebert said this when the movie first came out, but you need to see it in 1080p, you need to see it that way on, you need to see it in HD quality as best as possible, because this is a movie that you just need to see in the best quality possible. Luckily, even though I watched this movie online, it was in the best quality possible, and that's because the cinematography is just gorgeous, it looks incredible, the sets are breathtaking, and the setting in the movie is just fantastic. And something I love is that it really does look like this could be a real person, and they make it seem like this could be a real setting. And that's something I think is just fantastic. But the cinematography is also very psychological, and it really is its own character. It gets into his head a bit. It kind of shows you things from his head, and I really like that. The way the movie, like, focused on what was going on in the background instead of what was going on in forward, I thought was really interesting. Like, some scenes, like, they just pan and they'll just show you sets, and then they don't actually show you the conversation, which I think is definitely very interesting. I was very impressed by that. I don't know how to explain it, guys, but the cinematography is just gorgeous. It's very psychological, and it might be the best ever, honestly. It's some of the best cinematography ever by far. I loved it. The editing is also fantastic to this movie. The movie flew by for me. I was so into it. But again, the editing style, I think, is really well done. The way they show the flashbacks and then cut to the present and then, things like that, I thought was very well done, and I really love that. The score as well is so dark, and it's very depressing, but it's also very hopeful at times, and I thought the score was just perfect to this movie, definitely. I thought it was fantastic, and I really did love it, I have to say. The score, I thought, was amazing, and I really did love the score to this movie. And, again, it really did flew by for me. The movie did win a shit ton of Oscars, thank God. I'm very happy it won the accolades that it did, because I don't think if the movie would have won as much, then the movie wouldn't be as known, definitely. I mean, I still think it would be as known, but I don't think it would be considered as high on, like, the greatest movies of all time, if it didn't win what it did at, the Academy Awards. What sucks, what makes no sense, that this did not win Best Picture. It didn't, and I heard that the movie that won is, like, considered one of the, least deserving Academy Award winners of all time, because this definitely should have won, and I'm so surprised that this didn't win. I don't know how this didn't win. I don't know what the Academy Award voters were on that day. They had to be on some kind of drug or something, but they should have given this the win, because it deserves all the money. It deserved every single category. I mean, it really just deserved everything. It should have won something in every category, honestly. I don't say that a lot for movies, but this is a movie that just should have won everything, because it has some of the greatest acting ever, some of the greatest directing ever, some of the greatest cinematography ever, some of the most beautiful tracking shots ever. I mean, it really deserved everything, definitely. And also, you really felt like you were in that time period of the 1800s to the early 1900s. You really did feel like you were there, and I thought that was fantastic. So now I really do want to talk about spoilers, because this is a movie where you just have to talk about spoilers. If you guys can't tell, Citizen Kane is probably my favorite classic movie that I reviewed, tied with Casablanca right now. I can't figure out which one I like more, Citizen Kane or Casablanca. They're both fantastic movies. If you guys have not seen Citizen Kane, do not watch the rest of this review, because I'm going to spoil the most important thing about this movie. I'm going to tell you guys what Rosebud means, and I really want to talk about, because I think it's a fantastic twist. So let's just get into it. Okay, so the way the movie ends, I think, is fantastic. I mean, when we see the Rosebud, when we see them burning stuff at the end of the movie, you see that they're burning the Rosebud sleigh, and obviously you can tell this meant a lot to Charles Foster Kane. Now, the reason I think he kept this after all these years, and why it was so important to him, is because Rosebud was when he was with his parents, when he was happy, when he had his family. And remember, his mom said, "Oh, I'll meet up with you later." She never came. She never came. He never saw her again. And I really feel the movie's trying to show that the reason he's such a bitter man, and the reason he got really upset, is because he didn't have that love from his parents. He didn't have his parents by his side. He could never rely on them. He could never call them. He could never see them again. And I mean, just think of how bad that would be if you weren't able to see your parents again. I would be crushed. I would be so upset if that happened, and I'd probably be as broken as Charles Foster Kane. I mean, our parents are one of the most important things to us, and for Charles Foster Kane, he misses his parents. He wants to be with them, and he's kept that snow globe after all those years, because those were the glory days with his parents. That's when he was happy. That's when he was with his parents, and I kind of feel like maybe he regretted some of the life choices he made, because all the life choices that he made were all because of leaving his parents, and that's really why I feel his last words were Rosebud, and I think it's an incredible message. I think it's something that is very... Now, it is a bit of an analysis, but it's also not, but I think it's just more of me just talking about why I really loved it. I think it's an incredible message, because it really shows the power of family, and how a family can hold everything together, and a family can always help you. Charles Foster Kane never really had someone. He had people in his life, but no one really he could talk to about this. You could tell he was going through a lot of things, and he never really talked to anyone about it. He never really did much about it, and he definitely could have done a lot more in his life. And I think in his final moments of dying, he realized, oh shit, I'm dying. And Rosebud, I think he was just thinking about it, thinking about the glory days and kind of thinking I wish I, changed some things in my life. And I think that really is why he said Rosebud, and that's why I think it's one of the greatest endings of all time. Honestly, the ending of Citizen Kane is by far one of the greatest endings of all time. And then the ending of the movie, where they just pan back to the way the movie started with the tracking shots, I think is genius. I love the way that ended, because it just shows you we've come full circle with this character. We know everything we need to know now, and the no trespassing, we know what we need to know. We don't need to go back to his house. We don't need to go back there, because now we know what's going on. We know why he was so upset. We know why this stuff happened to him. We know why he feels so, we know why he was so broken as a man. And that's why I think this movie is as important as it is. That's why this movie has such a great, powerful message. And that is why Citizen Kane is simply one of the greatest movies of all time. By the way, guys, you guys will see that my Letterboxd review is not in this description yet. That's because I haven't written it yet. For the next 5 movies, I'm not going to write a Letterboxd review till I'm done with the movie, because I want to focus to death on these movies. These are the last 4 movies I'm reviewing, you guys are going to be really hyped about. They're considered some of the greatest movies of all time. Now, tomorrow's movie, you're going to be really happy about that I'm finally reviewing it, and especially my last 4. I mean, I'm so excited for my last 4 movies, because we're already on a great path. This is by far the best classic movie I've watched so far. I can't wait to get this on Blu-ray. I feel so bad that I didn't just buy the damn thing. I couldn't. My credit card wasn't working. I'm sorry, guys. I couldn't buy it. But that's basically my review. Hope you all enjoyed. Please check out Citizen Kane if you haven't. Seriously, I know some people say that this movie is boring and that they didn't really like it, but if you're not forced to watch this in film class, give it a watch. Seriously, give it a watch. It is an incredible movie. It's a movie that everyone really does need to see at some point in their lives. I mean, as I said before, if you were to make a before you die list of movies, this needs to be like on the top list, because obviously this is a movie about a man regretting his life decisions in his life, and we're kind of seeing that unfold before our eyes, which I think is fantastic. And I don't really think there's a better movie to watch before you die than Citizen Kane. There really isn't. Honestly, I'm not saying it should be the last movie you watch, but before you die, definitely you need to see Citizen Kane. But that's basically my review. Hope you all enjoyed. Let me know what you guys thought of this movie you have seen. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Citizen Kane. I will see you guys in my next video, which there were a bunch of pilots leaked online early, so I'm going to review them. Even though they were leaked online, I'm going to review 2 of them that I definitely am watching. There's one that doesn't come out till January, so I'm just going to wait for that one, probably till like December. I'll review that one. But the 2 that came out, I definitely want to review them, and those will be my next videos, so I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.